Hello, I'm Amanda Clark, an advanced accredited practicing dietitian with a focus on weight management, and I'm the author creator of the Portion Perfection System. Now, over the years, I've observed a growing trend amongst adult female clients being diagnosed with ADHD, and I noticed specific problems with managing eating behaviours that likely contribute to increasing weight, like difficulty planning ahead. Now, the stats say that ADHD affects approximately 2.5% of the general population. Now, studies have been done in the bariatric population with varying results, but the average of those findings is that over 20% of people choosing bariatric surgery meet the criteria for ADHD diagnosis. Now, this is really important for me and for all dietitians to understand how to recognize the problem because it might not be on the medical history. And I need to know what strategies I can factor in that will be most helpful. I think it's also an opportunity for those undiagnosed to see if they recognize themselves in this discussion, and for friends and family of those with ADHD to understand how to be most helpful and supportive too. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Tessa Drysdale, an experienced ADHD counsellor who has first-hand experience with weight concern and with bariatric surgery. Thanks for joining me, Tessa.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I wondered if you could share a bit about your journey with ADHD, when you were diagnosed and how it's impacted your life.
Sure. So I was diagnosed when I was 16. I actually grew up in Africa and Melbourne and moved around a lot as a child. So a lot of the time I just thought, my hyperactivity and climbing trees and chairs and, all that mine's combined. So I'm hyper and inattentive and the whole shebang.
Ah,
Which they say is kind of rare in a way for women to be more hyperactive. They're more inattentive, usually when they're diagnosed. But I just go, well, it's more exciting because, I have a dog that's a cavoodle and she just like gets so hyper. So I make her hyper. And I remember I was staying with my mum once and she's like, have you had your meds? Now you believe I've got ADHD. And that is the thing. A lot of people, unless they experience it, if they're neurotypical, it's hard for them to actually understand what it's like. Like just then, me running off on a tangent. I've taken my meds, I'm having my breakfast, a
yeah.
smoothie, but then I've got a chia pudding there and a massive water bottle, a banana. I had a coffee, like four different coasters for the 4 or 5 things I may need.
I think you mentioned that you were diagnosed fairly young, but
Yeah.
obviously it was there before the diagnosis.
Yeah, it was. And I was 3 months premature. And it was interesting because if you're premature, the stats are like you're 3 times more likely and female to have ADHD. I've had a tough journey in the sense of when I wasn't diagnosed, I didn't know what was going on. A lot of the time, people may say you have bipolar. I had people tell me I had 6 or 7 different things, and I had none of it. And I was like, no, I'm not taking that medication. This is ridiculous. There's got to be something more, something else. Then I remember being diagnosed at 16 and with anxiety and ADHD. And I took myself off there at 16 because I knew something wasn't right. And my parents at the time, they were quite conservative. They didn't really agree with me, with this label, with me seeing someone. But I knew to the point that I was scratching my skin. My internal self was so tortured that I wanted to jump out of myself.
Okay, and so you're saying that you actually initiated
Yes.
the exploration and the diagnosis.
Yes, I did. Then my parents jumped in and then I had medication. They saw a difference and that was it, really. But it has taken until now in my 40s for, I guess, my parents and for me to have grown and my family to have sort of seen, oh, that's what she's like off medication. That's what she's like on medication. Now everyone's been diagnosed. Maybe it's actually a thing. Maybe it's not just made up.
Because it
Yeah,
must really impact your the relationships that you build.
yeah, it
Mm.
does, especially romantic relationships. When you're with someone who's neurotypical and you've got ADHD or autism or both, it's really hard because your emotional regulation goes out the window when your meds wear off and it's late at night. And trying to explain to someone who just doesn't view the world through the same lens as you can be quite challenging. So I've had ups and downs in jobs and relationships and things like that. Multiple jobs, multiple relationships, all of that stuff, gone on meds, off meds. So I could travel to different places where you couldn't have those meds in those countries.
Well, it's really starting to be recognised. So I wonder how ADHD has influenced your relationship with weight and your decision to have bariatric surgery and what needed to happen before and after.
Well, to be honest, I ended up with binge eating disorder. And like earlier, when I said when I was 16 or 17, I was put on a whole lot of different medication that made me blow up. I could never lose that weight, no matter what I did. I spent, far out. I'm 42 now, from 16 to 42, trying to lose weight. I would go on this diet, that diet, and I would look at PT courses. I would have a PT. I would do this, that, and my weight would just be yo-yoed. And then eventually I actually thought, you know what, there's got to be something more. So I had bariatric surgery 3 years ago next April, but exercise every day, have to watch my portions with your lovely book and the light that flashes on my water bottle to remind me to drink. I love it.
Very good.
Because I don't drink enough water. That's another thing with ADHD. And so it has affected me. So I'm actually seeing my bariatric surgeon tomorrow, because I'm doing my bariatric certification to be a bariatric counsellor, as well as an ADHD clinical services provider, which is what I am now. I'm doing my advanced certification in the ADHD clinical services provider at the moment. In terms of weight, Amanda, it has affected me because I just felt like I needed to shove food in my mouth and I didn't have the ability to stop.
So you would say that the binge eating was essentially what contributed to the weight gain?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. And then I'll purge because I'd feel shame and guilty.
Okay. And would you say that that one of the impacts of the ADHD would be that your impulse control kind of threshold might be lower than somebody else's, that somebody
Yeah.
else might feel like I really feel like eating that, but I'm
Oh,
not going to,
100%.
and that it's
100%. Because the thing is
difficult.
that we don't have the boom gate that gives you the few seconds to think about and then respond. We don't have that luxury. It's like someone says something and then suddenly, boom, react.
And would you say that the same things that might help with binge eating in the population generally, which might be eating regularly throughout the day, not enabling yourself to be too hungry, having a bit of a plan, are they the same things that help in the situation of ADHD and binge eating?
Yes and no. Because to be honest, until I was medicated for binge eating and on a few different types of ADHD medication, and I saw a therapist as well as portion control, like those books and things like that. And I had to get to the point of being able to like not drink alcohol for a year before I had surgery. I didn't have to, but I chose to because I wanted it to work. And 6 months of therapy to understand what it meant. It wasn't a quick fix. And to learn to have smaller portions. And then in the few years post bariatric surgery, while your body's going through those changes, you read the books that are behind you and the portions. And I love their diagrams on the plate. So I know how much to put of what and where. And being ADHD, visual is amazing. I don't have to read all this text. I can go, oh, fish, potato, something, which is
Right.
great. So visual stuff definitely helps me. It might be different for someone else because we're not the same. So
Mm.
for me, there were multiple factors and multiple things that I had to put in place. And I think from a ADHD point of view with dietitian things, it's hard because it makes your job a little trickier because maybe how a dietitian would approach someone with ADHD would be one way, and the person would feel so overwhelmed that they just wouldn't want to come back. Nothing against a dietitian, but because they would feel hopeless, like they would feel, I can't do this. It wouldn't be like, hey, you know what, baby steps? This is what I do for someone who's neurotypical. This is what I need to do, break it down a bit more for someone with ADHD or autism.
Got it. Okay. And for those who may not know, could you explain what ADHD is and how it typically affects somebody's life?
Yeah. So it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And basically, it actually affects every area of your life. Your executive functioning, your planning, your prioritizing, your response inhibition. It's like an umbrella, okay? Imagine you're wearing an umbrella on your head, trying to solve problems, trying to be flexible in your thoughts, trying to finish a task, trying to not blurt things out, trying to basically go from A to B without sensory overload, executive dysfunction, analysis paralysis, emotional flooding, having meltdowns, you name it. It's basically a deficit of your executive function, which helps you function in the world. So when there's a deficit in that, it affects everything.
And so we've identified that that it potentially makes you act at a lower threshold of desire, which certainly
Yeah,
can have an impact on weight management.
yeah.
Something else I've noticed is for some people, they really struggle to actually tell me what they usually eat in a day.
Mm,
We get people to complete a food diary, and
yeah,
some people just say it differs every day.
yeah.
And it
On how they
probably,
feel.
yeah, and it probably actually doesn't. When I look at it, there is a pattern there, but they haven't found the pattern, and they feel as though they're just responding to how they're feeling during the day. But it does fall into some kind of pattern.
Yeah, I think also because it can be quite overwhelming. Like before, when I said I can't remember the question you asked me, it's like the
Yeah.
cortisol level went up, flooded my brain, and I was like, oh God, I'm being asked a question and I need to know the answer, and a little bit of stress. So
Hmm.
when you have to try and rely on your recall of your working memory, which isn't so good for the majority of people with ADHD. Hey, tell me what you ate yesterday. Tell me what you ate 20 minutes ago. I can't remember. Why? Oh, because I saw Susie there and oh my God, look, I got an email. Let's see what my
Yeah.
email is. And then you suddenly hyper focus on something and then everything else goes out the window. So the things they don't see important, which is very important to you. Hey, what did you
Mm.
eat today? We need to work on this. What are your
Yeah.
goals? All of that. Suddenly goes out the window if they get overwhelmed with emotion and suddenly think of something that they get fixated on, like a bee in their bonnet. But there has to be a way that someone with ADHD, as a client that comes to you, like let's say if I came to you and I'd be like, hey, Amanda, please help me. If I would feel comfortable in myself to say to you, you know what, that doesn't work for me. I don't understand. Can you please just tell me straightforward? Like, can you draw a potato on the plate? Like, I can't actually process what you're saying.
Maybe a lack of planning might be one of those attributes that also could contribute to poor weight control.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And a lack of education.
okay.
Because that's the thing, a lot of people, if they've got ADHD and maybe their parents, when they were younger, it was too much to deal with the child having ADHD that, no, it is too exhausting, let's just go past McDonald's. But now, having that diagnosis 40 and beyond, it's like, I know I need to eat this. I know I need to go to the gym, but God, I had the worst day at work and I just want a glass of wine. And you know, so and so was mean to me. Maybe so and so wasn't mean to me. Then the rejection sensitive dysphoria, thinking people don't like you, and then you want to eat a piece of cake, and then you
Mhm.
go, well, might as well have another piece of cake. I've had one now.
And so
You know?
when does the medication quieten down that
Yes. If you're on the
pattern?
right dose and the right medication,
Mm.
I can say to you before, like this, when it kicks in, zzz,
So that seems to make it
yes,
important that, maybe we as dietitians have the opportunity to identify people who perhaps should go um, and be assessed to see whether they
yes,
have it, because it could really be a critical change
a
to
hundred
quieten all of that
percent.
down. Yeah.
100%. And then it'll make your life easier as well. So maybe when you ask someone, hey, what did you eat for breakfast? And they're suddenly thinking, what did I eat for breakfast? Oh my God, I forgot to eat breakfast today. What am I going to have for lunch? Did I feed the dog? I didn't even have a dog. Maybe it was a cat. Oh God, now I can't even remember the animal. So what was the question?
Yeah. Interesting.
It's
And
just, yeah.
and I hear talk and I see discussion about adult onset ADHD in women, but is it adult onset or is it just under under-recognised now being recognised?
See, I reckon it's a bit of both. I think mainly though being recognized, and it wasn't recognized because people just were like, oh, well, women, girls, be quiet, go sit in the corner. It's a boys thing. And suddenly them going, hang on, we need a neurodiversity statement. Yeah, okay, we better keep up with the times. What is this? I wonder why my boss is suddenly like this. And people suddenly recognizing, hey, maybe there's something to this, and then research coming out, and people like celebrities coming out. And that's why it's also been really recognized, and I hate to say almost accepted more.
So have you found any specific techniques or tools or therapies in creating routines that could help to follow through with some of the healthy eating behaviours?
I have, if I put small bowls and plates in front of the big bowls and plates,
Right.
if I stick sticky notes everywhere, if I have my watch going ding every 30 minutes and the flashing light, drink water.
Okay, so alarms.
Alarms help
What's on
me.
the sticky notes?
Don't eat the chocolate.
Okay.
PMS.
Mhm.
Another sticky note might be, this won't do you any good. Get an apple.
Okay.
Another one might be capital letters stop. Because then it makes me stop and think before I grab the thing I shouldn't really be having.
Yeah, so just a diversion, a distraction from what
Yes.
you were doing. Interesting.
Yes. Yes. And it's hard. It's hard. I think it's harder sometimes with wine, like a glass of wine. You might want a few glasses of wine. So now I've switched to alcohol free a few nights a week. So
I think wine's a problem for a lot of people because wine reduces your inhibitions and stopping eating is an inhibiting behavior. As
mm,
soon as you've had some wine or any alcohol, it's harder to say no, or it's harder to actually stop.
because everyone wants to feel accepted and part of it, don't they? And you don't want to not go out to something you're invited to. And that's what I struggled with after my surgery. You want to go, but you don't want to be subjected to have the tiny portion. And people say, why are you eating so little? And because you don't want to have to tell, well, I don't want to tell, well, I have now, been on this.
You
But you know
are.
what I mean? Like in general, you don't want to go when you first have it done, tell people because it's
And I
private.
suppose particularly in that eating environment, when you're eating with people that you've eaten with for years, there's a distinct change to your behavior. And so it's noticeable. You don't seem to be you if
Yeah.
you're behaving differently. And so that can be very
Yeah.
uncomfortable for everybody else in your circle because you're not you.
You actually end up losing friends. I noticed that because I started to like myself more and I liked shopping more because I could actually go to a store and buy size 10 Levi pants. I was like size 22 and that felt amazing.
And so for the dietitians in the audience, and I know that we do have some, using visual tools is helpful, obviously, rather than just a whole lot of words. Maybe keeping things quite simple, just trying to get one juggling ball in the air, not trying to change everything at once. What other things can dietitians be mindful of?
To be honest, I would say something related to rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is so strong in people with ADHD. And I don't really have the answer for you now. I can get back to you when I've thought about that. And me to even say that to you, Amanda, is huge because usually I would just go, I have to have an answer, but I don't.
Hmm.
All I know is that it would be related to someone being able to walk into a dietitian's office, feeling they need help, feeling rejected and the shame cycle, but not quite wanting to not be accepted. And then they may feel, oh, I don't do that like the dietitian's telling me. And then they might feel more rejected.
Okay, so it sounds like it can be a threatening situation even
Yeah.
coming to the dietitian. And so I guess we want the right environment that is comfortable, um, and the right kind of tools and strategies that makes the person go, I can do that.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Spot on.
Okay.
And look, I'm honestly, what works for me might not work for Joe Blogs down the road.
Mm. So if we were thinking about um, trying to follow a bit of a plan. What you've told me is using alarms could be quite helpful. Making sure the plan is very, very simple and clear.
Yeah.
And maybe there's other triggers to direct you to what you're going to be having.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think a lot of that feeds well into portion perfection with the visual
Yeah.
tools, with the measurement devices, so that you can clearly see, you know, when you finished.
100%. And I have also, so I've got the orange book behind you, the bowl, the plate, the
Mhm.
two little lunch, the glass.
Barry preppers.
Yes, those. Thank you. And also I got a menu plan, and I liked the fact it sat and it flipped like a calendar thing.
Right.
There
Yes.
was one for men, one for women.
Behind me. Yes.
Yeah, and it was brilliant. And I'd be like, oh, look at this and look at this. But I liked more the orange book
Mhm.
because I like the feel of it. And I could have the plate and then look at the orange book and go, oh, look, it looks like my plate needs to look like that page,
Yeah.
which I loved.
Okay. So very clear. Good.
Yeah.
Something else I'm interested in as a dietitian is that, you know, as you'd be aware, kind of earlier in my career, my only involvement with ADHD was young boys being referred for food intolerance investigation to look at food additives.
Yeah.
Are they relevant for adult women? Are food additives part of the problem?
Do you know what? I think more of the problem is hormonal.
Mm-hmm.
Menopause, you know, is it
So symptoms get worse
perimenopause?
or more
Yes.
pronounced at
Yes, more pronounced, more pronounced.
pregnancy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle,
Mm-hmm.
you might have more energy, but you might also be a bit more scattered. It really affects you. So if you don't get enough sleep, your medication might not be as effective. Certain times in the cycle, your medication might not be effective, depending on where you are in your cycle, your emotional
Yeah.
regulation. So that feeds into your eating. People believe if you eat certain foods, it affects you. They're foods that work better for people with ADHD, maybe less coffee. One big thing is your gut and your mind, that connection and the flora.
Yeah. And I'm actually wondering whether that might be part of the ultra processed food connection. So I need to understand more about how strongly that is connected. But I'm
Yeah.
very interested in kind of the growth of a whole lot of problems, or the increased prevalence of a whole lot of problems and ultra processed foods. And, you know, as a dietitian, I'm helping people to navigate the processed food aisles, because people
Mm.
want simplicity and ease,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to filtering some other things out, because most of the food assessment systems, we use saturated fat and sugar content, but we haven't been excluding things based on specific additives. So
Mm.
that's my next step.
I think that's a great step. If someone didn't have to go to Coles and have the bright lights and have to look at all the aisles like this, it just makes me dizzy. I hate food shopping. It's just too much.
Mm.
But when you sit there and you order online, you actually can stop and look at the food you're ordering and refer to notes you might have from a dietitian.
Yeah, you can be a bit more discerning,
And
and
you're not buying the chocolate bars at the checkout.
yeah, because you're not going down every aisle. But yeah, so if you've got the picture of the food that's
Yeah.
recommended, you can
Yeah.
go straight for that. I
Yeah.
like that.
I ate healthy at home because mum, when I was growing up, would have salads with everything, and but it was never portion control. That is the biggest thing. That is what I love about your brand and your wonderful things behind you. Like, because realistically, you forget how small your stomach is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very easy to not even realize how many mouthfuls in you are, to
Yeah.
to even judge it by that. So for other people with ADHD who are considering or have undergone bariatric surgery, do you have some specific advice for them?
If you're considering it, I would say definitely learn about everything to do with it, the pros and cons. A lot of stuff happened afterwards that no one even told me. It's really hard. You've got to really want it, and you have to exercise every day, even if you don't want to. That's why I got a dog.
It's interesting what you say there about things that you didn't know. And I wonder if some of that is there being too much information being given.
Maybe.
I think what you've said there is interesting. We have an online course for pre-bariatric surgery,
Oh,
and
do you? Okay.
I've had some great feedback from people because they can watch it over and over again. So things that I say, oh, you need to be able to do this and you need to be able to do that, I can say it quickly because you can listen to it again
Yep.
and you can
Yep.
ask questions,
Yes.
and rather than just the time frame of the consultation.
Yep.
And what about friends and family? How can they be most supportive to somebody with ADHD generally?
Listen and have a hell of a lot of patience and compassion.
Mhm.
And maybe also, I recommend books to the people that I do coaching with. If their partner doesn't have ADHD or vice versa, I recommend certain books for them to read and for them to actually understand what it's like for someone with ADHD. It really helps if family can just be compassionate, supportive, and just maybe do some research, read up on what it's like to have ADHD, and find the
Mm.
books written by people who don't have ADHD for people who do have ADHD in their relationships. Or
Is there anything that friends and family should avoid saying or can say that can be helpful?
if they say get over it, snap out of it, oh my gosh. Just focus, just pay attention, stop talking.
Which is probably something that
Awful.
you would hear a lot
Yeah.
as a child.
Even as an adult, though, even people in their 40s or 50s could say to someone, their significant other, just stop talking. I'm trying to watch something. Or you've told me this before. Or, oh, and it's just like, that's really not helpful, because then that actually makes the person with ADHD who can't help the fact they might be motor mouth. And it gets the whole rejection sensitive dysphoria, the whole, I don't like myself, where's the piece of cake? And maybe not ask too many questions. Just listen. And if they tell you something, just be grateful they told you something. And that will
Okay,
shock the pants off someone with ADHD, because they're actually feeling seen and validated.
great. Okay. And you've said that counselling, obviously, for the person with ADHD can help them to recognise the things that they could get
Yeah,
structured that can help them.
100%.
So how can people get in contact with you?
Well, they can definitely go to my website, neurodiverseempowerment.com.au. And also, on my website, I've got a little box. You can put your email in there. You can sign up to my newsletter. And also, I will be releasing shortly something called Reclaim Your Spark, the ultimate 10-step checklist, a guide for women over 40 newly diagnosed with ADHD. These are the things that you want to check off. You want to basically not freak out, but know I'm here to help you, and it's all going to be okay.
Perfect. All
Yeah.
right. Wonderful. Thank you, Tessa.
Thanks,
It's been
Amanda.
enlightening.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much for your time today.
So if you would value support from Tessa, please start the process by getting in touch and getting on her waiting list too for her course. If you're looking for a structured eating system that can help with organisation, then take a look at Portion Perfection. And if you're in Australia and looking for compassionate weight management dietitians, you can also visit our Australian website. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.